Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our virtual trade mission to the UAE. And this particular breakout session is focused on healthcare. And we thank you for joining. We are delighted to be partnering with the U.S. U.A.E. Business Council led by Danny Sebright. I will introduce him in a moment. I just wanted to say that I run the American Middle East Institute, and we work to build business, educational, and cultural connections with the countries of the Middle East. And we happen to be headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So a lot of our listeners are from this region, kind of like the tri-state region of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio. Actually, three of our great research universities are right within a walking distance of me, at the University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon. We also have West Virginia University, which is about an hour's drive from here. So our institute has hosted many delegations from the Middle East and taken many to the Middle East. One of them was a highlight for us. In late 2018, we were able to bring a group of robotics companies and advanced manufacturing companies, healthcare companies to Dubai, and we were also able to bring our mayor, Mayor William Peduto, and he will actually be joining our advanced manufacturing session, which will be at 12:30 today. So that will be the third of our and final session. There are three that we're having today. So if you have questions, you can feel free to type them on the chat button at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer them. And let me just now, without further ado, introduce Danny Sebright, who, as I mentioned, is the head of the U.S. U.A.E. Business Council. And if you tuned in earlier when we had His Excellency, the Consul General Shaheen from the UAE based in New York, you heard me say about Danny that he leads one of the best business councils around. I've worked with many of them, and I can attest to his professionalism, his vast knowledge, and just how hardworking he is. I honestly don't know how you run as many webinars as you do. I know you and your team are amazing. So Danny was appointed the head of the U.S. U.A.E. Business Council in 2008. He's previously worked, he actually has worked at the geostrategic advisory firm, the Cohen Group, from 2002 to 2016. He has had a great deal of government service. He was the Defense Department's director of the Policy Executive Secretariat for the Global War on Terrorism. He also served in the office of the Undersecretary for Policy at the Department of Defense. He is on multiple advisory boards and just is one of the most knowledgeable people I know about the Middle East and the UAE in particular. So Danny, without further ado, let me turn it over to you. And again, if you have questions, our dear listeners, please do write them, and we'll do our best to ask them.
Well, Simin, thank you so much to you and your team, to Maria Wegley, and for all of the work that you've done to put this important webinar series together. As you said, your first ever virtual webinar, and the first one, obviously, also to the UAE. We very much appreciate the ability to partner with you in delivering some content to better inform your companies, your community in the greater Pittsburgh area about what are some of the important opportunities going forward in the United Arab Emirates and areas for partnership between the U.S. and the UAE. As I said this morning on the overview call, Pittsburgh is certainly on the forefront of the cutting edge of 2 or 3 verticals that are very critical to the UAE's diversification going forward, those being in tech and healthcare, life sciences. And I think it's really wonderful that we've been able to sort of parse out this special briefing, if you will, on healthcare opportunities. On my team, we have a crackerjack team of 5 folks dedicated to working and understanding and creating better awareness of all the key opportunities in the UAE diversification plan for American companies and American think tanks and American tech institutes. Mr. Christopher Ulmer is our senior director, and one of his main responsibilities at the Business Council is to work the healthcare portfolio, if you will, the life sciences portfolio. He has done an amazing job in working in conjunction with the UAE Embassy in Washington, D.C., and our partners in the U.S. government to really promote better awareness on in this vertical in particular about what are our opportunities going forward. We've brought on, just in the last 2 years, over 25 new members in this vertical, in this space, from pharma to healthcare to tech and AI and tech in healthcare. Were just talking with a California-based company yesterday that's a leading expert on genomics, and they're coming on as a new member in August. And so there's just a lot of opportunity, a lot of interest in this space, in this sector. And I'm going to turn it over to Christopher now for his briefing, because it's gotten to the point where I think he knows a lot more about the vertical in the sector than I do. So I'll chime in if necessary, but I'm very fully confident that Christopher knows what he's talking about. So over to you, Christopher. And again, Simin and Maria, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, thank you, Danny. Good morning, everyone. And building on Danny's comments, a big thank you to Simin and Maria and AMEI's board for partnering with us. It's a pleasure to be here. So if we could start the PowerPoint, please. And as many of you know, the development of a world-class healthcare system is of critical importance to the UAE. It's actually one of the 6 pillars of their national agenda, which is also known as Vision 2021. The UAE sector is rapidly expanding to meet the needs of a growing population, the high prevalence of chronic diseases, and the country's ambition to become a regional medical tourism hub. As many of you know, probably cardiovascular diseases, cancer, diabetes, obesity are a big issue in the UAE, so that unfortunately has contributed to some of the public health issues that they face. The UAE is also developing more specialized healthcare capabilities so it can reduce the number of patients it sends abroad, notably to the United States, for complex and costly treatment. But still, the UAE sends thousands of its citizens every year to the United States, often for extended periods of time, with full expenses for the patients and families paid for by the UAE government. And given the UAE's very small population, it would not be economical or feasible for the country to provide for every single type of medical care locally, especially pediatrics, among other things. Therefore, the UAE will most definitely continue to send its citizens abroad, and particularly to the United States, specifically to receive some types of care which are really complex. Go to the next slide, please. So the UAE has developed or sought to reduce the number of patients that need to be sent abroad by developing certain local capabilities and bringing world-class healthcare to the UAE. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but the U.S. has obviously contributed a lot to that. If we could go to the next slide, please. Notably, the UAE has established an outpost of Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi. Also, more recently, in November of 2019, the largest public hospital operator in Abu Dhabi, SEHA, and Mayo Clinic, based in Rochester, Minnesota, entered a joint venture to operate a new 741-bed hospital in Sheikh Shakhbout Medical City, designed for patients with serious and complex medical conditions. So Mayo Clinic will become a shareholder of this new operating company, which is a first. And this agreement, as I said, is a first, but it continues a very long tradition whereby federal and emirate level healthcare institutions sign partnership agreements with prominent U.S. hospitals and healthcare companies Other examples include CHOP or Johns Hopkins, and for international patient care, medical training, research, telemedicine, which is of course of growing importance now, and the development or management of hospitals, consultancy services. In addition to offering significant opportunities for U.S. providers, large companies, but also some.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You blocked out for a moment, but I think maybe it's working now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I was just saying that U.A.E. also offers opportunities for large medical device companies and small ones. GE Healthcare, for example, and its MRI scanners can be found kind of all over the country. Honeywell recently launched a major new project to print over 30 million N95 masks, 3D printing, and they've been present in the country's healthcare sector for a long time. And most recently, actually last month, the Dubai Future Foundation launched Dubai Future Labs, which is the first applied research and development lab specializing in future technology. And it focuses on applied research and business modeling, including in the healthcare sector. Their solutions include developing durable and efficient ventilators that primarily rely on components available in the U.A.E., so in current supply chains, so can easily be sourced and assembled. Also, very recently, the U.A.E. announced a national strategy to turn the U.A.E. into a global printing center. So this partnership will produce a wide variety of 3D printing goods, including in healthcare. And DHA, Dubai Healthcare Authority, also has a 3D printing strategy, and they opened an innovation center in February of this year in partnership with an additive manufacturing healthcare specialist firm that, among other things, prints prosthetic limbs and teeth. So this allows medical professionals at DHA hospitals in Dubai to provide patients with specific anatomical models, allowing them to conduct detailed pre-operative analysis and to improve patient communication. So this technology will really help to save costs, or potentially to help reduce costs. The United Arab Emirates also turns to American biotechnology and pharmaceutical and life science companies, as well as startups, to improve the breadth and quality of healthcare provision. As you may know, the U.A.E. is the regional headquarters of most major American pharmaceutical companies. The U.A.E. has worked very hard to create a regulatory environment conducive to being one of the first countries in the world to receive new pharmaceutical treatments. And although the U.A.E. does import most of its drugs at present, it's beginning to slowly change, as some international pharmaceutical giants have partnered with U.A.E. companies to locally manufacture their products. And the U.A.E. is also currently embarking on important efforts to digitize health data and create a new information exchange system that will eventually cover the whole country. And the U.A.E. has turned to leading American companies such as Cerner, for instance, to help in these efforts. And healthcare IT is another potential fruitful avenue of collaboration, including obviously telemedicine, which has taken on increased importance as a result of this global pandemic. We can go to the next slide, please. So regarding key players, there's several public sector institutions that play a major role in U.A.E. regulation and or provision. Department of Health Abu Dhabi, more commonly known as DOH, regulates healthcare in Abu Dhabi, also oversees international patient care for public hospitals in Abu Dhabi. It's traditionally one of the most productive avenues of cooperation for U.S. hospitals. So it's a very important player. Abu Dhabi Health Services Company, SEHA, which we mentioned before, it's an independent public joint stock company that owns and operates all public hospitals and clinics, actually, across Abu Dhabi, including the Sheikh Shakhbut Medical City, where they're partnering with the Mayo Clinic. And then the Ministry of Health and Prevention, MOHAP, formerly known as just MOH, On top of its countrywide regulatory functions, MILHAF directly manages public healthcare services in certain areas of the UAE, particularly in the Northern Emirates, and it is also a key interface for innovative pharmaceutical companies. The Ministry of Defense, also known as MOD, runs Zayed Military Hospital in Abu Dhabi and two smaller hospitals in Sharjah and Al Ain that provide healthcare for members and of the UAE military and their families. So they're also an important stakeholder in this. Dubai Health Authority, DHA. So in addition to its role as a regulator, they operate all of Dubai's 85 public healthcare facilities. Then in terms of free zones, there's Dubai Healthcare City Authority. Of course, the UAE Embassy in Washington, D.C. Is also an important source of patient referrals. Some other key players in the UAE's healthcare sector include Mubadala, which is an investment and development company established by the government of Abu Dhabi. They have actively spurred the development of healthcare in the Emirate through one of its verticals, Mubadala Healthcare. It's obviously forged partnerships with leading international institutions to bring world-class healthcare to Abu Dhabi. Cleveland Clinic, Abu Dhabi being the most well-known example, but there's also the Imperial College London, their diabetes center. And as a result of this pandemic, Mubadala has redoubled its commitment to investing in healthcare, and they actually created a special fund for this purpose in May, or at least they made the announcement. So just a quick word about Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi. State-of-the-art medical institution, offers world-class healthcare to patients from the UAE, but also from the region. They have 14 institutes and 6 centers of excellence. And they're also breaking ground, or currently building, a new cancer treatment set to open in 2021. If we go to the next and final slide, please. So how can Pittsburgh area companies engage and be involved in the UAE healthcare sector? So first of all, visiting Arab Health, which is the largest gathering of healthcare and trade professionals in the Middle East, takes place every January in Dubai. Provides a good introduction to the market, and you can really plant the seeds for the future. And you have anyone in the UAE in the healthcare sector will be there, and also regionally, there'll be people from officials from the greater region and from all across the world. We at the Business Council provide our healthcare members, whether in pharma, hospitals, medical device companies, with access to events with senior American and Emirati government officials, and also provide some market intelligence, introductions, and other services to our members. The U.S. Department of Commerce's U.S. Commercial Service team in the UAE, in both Dubai at the consulate and also, of course, at the embassy in Abu Dhabi, provide American companies with market intelligence and some other services, which they provide for a fee. And last not least, participating in AMEI events and activities is a very good way to connect with the UAE and region writ large. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was very informative. And let me ask again, as I did in the earlier segment, will some of these slides be available if people want to view them? Or will they be on your website? Maybe that's what you said, Danny.
No, I mean, they're available. We can send them to folks directly. We can give them to you, Simin, to forward on, you and Maria. And
okay.
We can also have them on our website. Whatever works. It's easy. They're not proprietary in that regard.
Okay, very good. So let me open it up for some Q&A. So let me ask you, now that we're in the middle of this COVID-19 craziness, I always call it sort of somewhat surreal, because I don't think any of us have ever lived through anything like this. It's certainly been 100 years since the United States had a pandemic, or was part of it. So it's really something. And I'm just wondering, are there opportunities in healthcare that are growing as a result of the COVID-19 when related to the UAE.
So I'm going to let Chris chime in here as well, but I suppose we should start with that COVID-19 forcing everyone to be at home and not be able to come in for a regular medical appointment or checkup or more routine medical visit that could be done remotely has really emphasized the importance of telemedicine for them. And they were already on a road and a track to highlighting and pursuing telemedicine for the future because of their digital focus and because of their geography. But this has just accentuated and highlighted that drive, if you will. And so they have been looking and exploring all kinds of new technologies and opportunities to focus on telemedicine. An interesting and related sector to healthcare is food security. And there's a health aspect to food security. They found that during the pandemic, they needed to even double and triple their efforts to make sure that supply lines for food, supply lines for water, supply lines for medicines, and medical equipment were all in durable and in good shape and reliable. And I think they're taking a lot of lessons learned away from that. Just apps and artificial intelligence technologies that can help them maintain the assuredness of supply, and that a product is being manufactured under the appropriate guidelines in whatever country they're importing it from, and tracking its progress all the way back to the UAE. We have one company that we just brought on as a new member that's an expert in this area with regard to food. And this is something that the Emiratis are very interested in as another lesson learned from COVID-19. Chris, do you want to chime in? Is there another one that you could mention or two? I have a couple others, but I want to give you a chance to say a word.
Sure. No, I mean, obviously telemedicine is big. I mentioned in my remarks 3D printing. For example, NYU Abu Dhabi is partnering with Mubala to print 3D protective masks, which can provide potentially a higher level of protection and also is more environmentally friendly. So I think this goes to show that the UAE is always open to new ideas and solutions from American companies, and 3D is and will continue to be have many applications in the UAE and have a lot of focus. So encourage companies to really persevere. Things can take sometimes a little bit more time in the UAE, and obviously it's a little difficult to travel there at the moment. But I think sustained engagement can yield very good dividends.
One last example, another example I'd give you, Simin, is also on automated patient healthcare record. Obviously, the Emiratis already were again marching along the path of trying to come up with one unified, centralized, if you will, technology in this regard. But given that the inability to travel abroad, given the increasing reliance on the partnerships with institutions like Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, others back in the U.S., this idea of working through some of the challenges and the road and the speed bumps to an automated patient healthcare record that could transfer private, sensitive healthcare data about individuals back and forth through the ether between doctors and institutions in the UAE and in the US has also taken on a new sense of urgency. And there's a lot of work being done in that area as well. And the last one is just in AI in general within the healthcare space. A lot of focus on AI applications on healthcare broadly speaking. And if any of your companies, any of your research institutes, any of your hospitals, healthcare organizations have interesting, innovative technologies in these areas that they have developed as a result of COVID-19, the UAE is always interested in adopting best global practices, and they would be very interested in at least understanding more in the first instance about what some of your institutions have done and what some of their lessons learned have been coming out of COVID-19?
You know, we actually, because we are such a center here in Pittsburgh of robotics and artificial intelligence, and, you know, as I'd mentioned in the first session, you know, the first robotic car was invented here, you know, decades ago, actually, at Carnegie Mellon University. We do have many companies that have been spun out of our universities that are working in healthcare, that are on the forefront of robotics. I mean, I'll call out like the Robotics Hub, which has a collection of companies working in robotics and AI, and several of them working in healthcare. I remember at our conference in Dubai, that I mentioned, alluded to earlier, we actually had we actually had this one company that's called Seismic that actually assists. It sort of reads your muscles. You wear this sort of bodysuit and it reads your muscles to help you. Like if you're getting out of a chair, it supports you. If you're walking and you have a problem with your hip or your back, it supports you. And it's a robotic, you know, mechanism. It's really quite extraordinary. And there are many things like that where you'll see artificial intelligence, you know, really helping people in their actual, you know, day-to-day lives, as well as, you know, using machine learning for so many different diagnoses and the different kinds of algorithms that have come out of with some of these companies. It's truly, I'm proud to live in this region, in the region of Pittsburgh. You know, it has something like 36 colleges and universities. I'd mentioned in our earlier session, you know, led by our great research universities, University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University, West Virginia University, many others. They are all working in so many areas, but I want to highlight that healthcare is one of the is one of our strongest points, one of our strongest industries. UPMC is the largest medical employer in the United States. And they have several specialty hospitals and are building more as we speak, you know, in cancer, heart and transplant, vision and rehabilitation, the premier, you know, top 10 children's hospital, and then the McGee Women's Hospital. So we also have the Allegheny Health Network and Highmark hospital systems. And there are other smaller, but those are the two biggest. And this is, so there's a lot of opportunity for these companies to connect. I know that UPMC has run several international hospitals in different countries around the globe. And I would love to see more of a, I would love to see more UPMC in the Middle East and in the UAE. I know, and that actually leads me to the question. I know that the UAE already, we saw from Chris Ulmer's presentation, that there are so many premier U.S. Health institutions already in the United Arab Emirates. Are there, and I would imagine Dubai and Abu Dhabi are, you know, they're the largest Emirates, and they have many of their hospitals, many of these U.S. connections there. Are there opportunities in the other Emirates that we should know about? And if so, what would you recommend as far as getting those conversations going?
Well, there are opportunities for sure. I don't know that there's opportunities to build a new American hospital necessarily in some of the other Emirates. There might be opportunities to come in and have a management contract, a partnership, knowledge sharing, that sort of thing, having professionals come and visit. A lot of American healthcare institutions have professionals come and visit and work for a month in Emirati healthcare institutions. The main, for focusing on the other Emirates, it's focusing on the emirate itself, whether would be Sharjah or Ras Al Khaimah or Quain or some of those. And it's also working with the Ministry of Health at the federal level, because it's the Ministry of Health that is responsible for administering and taking care of and helping the other 5 Emirates. Dubai Health Authority manages Dubai, and Abu Dhabi Department of Health manages Abu Dhabi. But then the federal Ministry of Health is responsible for the other 5. So there's multiple points of contact depending on who you're trying to talk to or where you're trying to speak. I would say that Sharjah and Ras Al Khaimah are the other 2 Emirates that probably deserve the most focus and attention after Abu Dhabi and Dubai. But there's still opportunity in the other 3 as well, especially for smaller scale partnership and health professional visits and things like that. The focus for all of this in all the verticals and sectors, not just healthcare for the future, is creating IP, creating a knowledge-based economy. So if you have an innovative technology, if you have ideas for how to take something to the next level, and you're looking for partnership in a country that's putting itself on the cutting edge of R&D development in the healthcare vertical and healthcare space, you should be thinking about conversations in the UAE with folks that want to partner to help you bring your IP there, to test it, to grow it, to expand it, whatever your application is. The Emiratis want to, as part of their goal and objective to be a knowledge-based economy, one aspect of that, which is very important to them, is to create intellectual property in the UAE in partnership, with key American companies and firms for sure. I'm sorry, just trying to turn this off. So that would be an area that I would say that your firms in Pittsburgh, given the tech nature of a lot of what your companies are doing, should have a particular focus.
Thank you. In our earlier session, we spoke a little bit about the Expo 2020, this grand expo that UAE was picked to host. And I know they've been working on that for years now. And it was to open in October of this year. And of course, because of the COVID-19, it's been moved to the fall of, the grand opening will be in the fall of 2021. And could you say a little bit about about that expo, and recall that there would be different, maybe there are different verticals that are featured at the expo, and I was wondering if you could just give a little bit of tell us about Expo 2021, because we might put together a delegation to just come over there and to take advantage of this grand exposition. So would love to hear some more about that.
Sure. I said a few words this morning on the earlier session. Why don't I let Christopher say a few words about Expo? He's intimately familiar with it as well, and it's also been one of the verticals that he's been responsible for at the Business Council. And then I can chime in with a few points too. Go ahead, Christopher.
Sure. So the Expo, formerly known as the World's Fair, happens every 5 years. As you may know, this will be the first one in the MENA region. And as mentioned, it has been rescheduled from 1 October 2021 to, I think, the 31st of March 2022, right before Ramadan. And one of its main focus will be mobility. And mobility can also have implications for healthcare, for instance, people who can't walk anymore or have trouble walking. So I think that in itself provides an opportunity for hospitals, medical device companies, and others to try to get involved and kind of show the potential solutions and ideas in that field. Also, in January of 2022, halfway through pretty much the expo, there will be a thematic week on healthcare, which should be at the same time as or right after, right before Arab Health. So I think Arab Health 2022 will be particularly important because of Expo and the fact that you can come to the UAE and also go to Expo and meet people from all over the world and some of them have an interest in healthcare. So I think that would be some of the main points. There's also, of course, a U.S. pavilion, and there's more information about that on our website, USUAEbusiness.org. You can also go on the State Department's page to see to learn a little bit more about the activities and the themes that will be present in the U.S. Pavilion, which aims to showcase the best and brightest of American innovation and invention, and yeah. So that would be yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I wasn't realizing that the giant Arab Health conference or convention that goes on every year, that I believe Dubai hosts, that this was going to overlap actually with the expo. So that will be
that would happen. That would happen in January of 2022, not this coming one. Right.
But as I understand that January 20, the expo will go through until, you said, just before the start of Ramadan in 2020.
6 months.
Yeah.
Yes, 6 months.
Yeah. So it will run 6 months.
And with a lot of the UAE's programming of these big conference in various verticals, there's going to be a lot of special effort to coordinate, whether it's Arab Health or one of the defense expos or some of the hospitality expos, to coordinate these in conjunction with Expo, so that when visitors come, they might have their Arab Health experience for a couple days, but then they would also participate in Expo.
So Danny, if you're a small to medium company and you want to expand your business and are looking at a very vibrant market like the UAE, what would you advise? Would you advise that they, well, obviously they could call you and talk to Chris, but what are some of the steps that they should think about as they're trying to make the right connections, maybe find a distributor for their product? What is some practical advice, if you wouldn't mind reiterating that for?
Sure. And I sort of smoothed over this a little bit in this morning's briefing, but there's a number of avenues that I would suggest. First, the UAE is very committed to making everything as transparent as possible. So there's a lot online. There's a lot for the person who wants to start investigating, researching, doing due diligence on what might be the interest or of their product or series of product or services. A lot of it's online. The next thing I would say is, it's not, and this is an important how to do business point in the UAE, it's not about what you have to sell. It's about what they want to buy. And if you show up or you start calling or you start emailing and you say you have this suitcase, your fuller bag of brushes that you're ready to come sell them a brush, and they have no interest in it, they don't need any brushes, it's going to be like two ships passing in the night. There's no conversation there. The most important thing that especially smaller companies can do is do their due diligence and understand if the Emiratis, given what their diversification goals of their economy are, have an interest in some of the products and services that you might have to offer, or might have an interest if you educate them onto why what you're offering is so innovative and so new that they should be thinking about it. That's the biggest mistake that most American companies make when they go to the UAE. They try to sell something that the Emiratis don't want, don't need, and don't even care about. So understanding what they want first is another really important point. Next, there's a number of organizations that can help. Yourself, Simin, of course, our organization, the U.S. Commercial Service at the embassy in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, which is run from the Department of Commerce in Washington. We have very close connections with those offices. They're always there to help American companies sell and understand better what the opportunities are in the marketplace. Another once you get a little bit more further along in your due diligence and your research, understanding the legal environment of how you might set up a business is really, really critical. That's another common mistake that a lot of companies make, is to not get some local legal advice. And we have 15 U.S. law firms alone on our membership list that have offices in the UAE. You have some brand name law firms right there in Pittsburgh that have offices in the UAE. Getting their advice about how you might think about setting up your business, about what kind of partners would make the most sense for you. These law firms have incredible experience and advice to give in that regard. That might cost a little money, might be a little bit further down the road after you do your due diligence, but it's still a very, very important piece of the puzzle. The UAE government, as I said, makes all of this available on the website, their embassy in Washington, their commercial trade office. The information is there. It's a little bit about patience, persistence, and sitting down and doing your due diligence. It really is. It's a lot easier to do this in the UAE and about the UAE than it is in any other country in the Middle East except maybe Israel. It truly is. They truly are trying to make it as easy as possible.
Oh, that's great. As I say, I can't say enough about what a tremendous experience it was when we took a delegation from our region to the UAE, and it was. I highly recommend it. I mean, the business aspect of it, and I mean, just top-notch folks, so with it, and you would think you were in your own country. I mean, it was such a great feeling, and also just the pleasurable aspects. I mean, having dinner outside at the Palace Hotel, under the stars with the Burj Khalifa right in front of us, doing a light show along the sides of it. That was like tremendous. People will never forget that experience. So I highly recommend just going, if you want to go for pleasure, but of course for business, there's a lot of opportunities, and Danny, you have a lot of great advice about that. And finding out, using some of our U.S. law firms that are based there, that know what are the pitfalls to watch out for, and that can give you the very best advice. I was wondering, I know that Chris had put up several hospitals that have established beachheads in the UAE, and those are certainly great success stories. Are there other success stories that you would want to highlight amongst those hospitals, or in the other sort of areas of healthcare? And I say this also related to the fact that we have so much technology and robotics and just a critical mass of talent here that is using some of the most cutting edge technologies ever seen in the world, and finding applications for them. And so there is a lot of opportunity, and maybe some of these success stories, if you want to highlight any, could be instructive.
Well, thanks, Simin, and I'm going to let Christopher speak here in a second as well. But you also reminded me, to your previous question, of another very, very important point. These companies, especially some of the bigger ones that are already successful, you have Cleveland Clinic right there in your backyard across the border, and some of these companies that have been very successful in the UAE already are very happy to talk and give smaller companies advice. They're very happy to help give smaller companies an overview of what their view of what the Emirati priorities are. And most of your smaller companies, I'm sure, already have business and connections with some of these bigger healthcare chains and operating companies that, as you saw, that we have on the list. Talking to some of those right in your own backyard is another important first step with regard to sussing out what sorts of things the Emiratis are interested in. It's also an avenue to potentially come in for partnership, because if the Emiratis have told Cleveland Clinic or have told Johns Hopkins that they want to go down XYZ service lines in the future, and they want to promote XYZ new procedures. Turning to those smaller companies to help to subcontract to them to help assist them with that is a natural thing that a bigger company does. And again, another interesting way to think about coming in as a partner and to find some new business opportunities in the UAE. As far as other areas or other examples, I mean, you mentioned 3D printing. There's obviously, with regard to artificial limbs and things like that, there's going to be more and more focus on that in the future with the 3D printing as far as parts and pieces to put into our bodies. There's going to be more focus. Nanotechnology is an area that's of focus. I mentioned earlier genomics. Genomics is a huge interest in the Emiratis because of some of the special medical problems that they have with regard to their population health, if you will, in the region with their genetics. Christopher, do you have one or two others that you want to mention that are escaping me?
Sure. So I think in addition to having projects in the UAE, American hospitals, sometimes companies also have projects with the UAE, but in the U.S. So bringing nurses, doctors for trainings in the United States. So I think companies should really, and hospitals should really view this as a two-way street. For instance, Danny mentioned CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. They've done a lot. They're very active in the UAE, and they've also helped kind of the broader Philly and Pennsylvania healthcare landscape and their relationship with the UAE, despite the fact, and just like Pittsburgh, that they don't have a major international airport. The Emirates and Etihad, they don't fly to Philadelphia or Pittsburgh yet, but they, I think it's still possible. So it's not just about New York and LA, of course. So I think really trying to see if you can also potentially partner with the UAE in some respect here in the US. I think that should also be explored.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. I'm sorry, were you saying?
The Dr. Bajawi, I was saying Dr. Bajawi at the UAE Embassy in Washington, D.C. is the key point of contact for healthcare providers to be engaging with here on the U.S. side in the first instance, and we can help folks if they don't know him already, if they don't know his office already, we can help folks connect with him as well.
Now, my experience with the U.S. embassies around the region are that they're very helpful, and they can help guide you and direct you to for taking the next step in whatever your business is. Very knowledgeable individuals, and we've featured some of them on some of the webinars that we have had. So this is very this has been very helpful to talk about the opportunities in healthcare with the UAE, and I wanted to mention that we are going to have another session of this virtual trade mission that will start at 12:30, so in a little over an hour, and this will focus on opportunities in advanced manufacturing, Pittsburgh being a center of really old industry. I mean, the turn of the last century, everyone with a patent came to Pittsburgh to establish their businesses, and all kinds of industrial processes were invented here and continue to this day. Of course, now with a twist of all the technology now that and robotics that applies to virtually every industry, but you see that a lot in. I mean, if you visit U.S. Steel or you go through some of the plants, you'd just be amazed at how high tech everything is. And so we're proud to have that here in our region. Advanced manufacturing, healthcare, as I mentioned, is a big industry here. And, of course, the education, which has this great partnership with industry. And so, I look forward to putting together another delegation to take to the UAE with some of these areas of expertise. Let's see here. So 12:30, I mentioned, we'll have Mayor Peduto joining us, the Pittsburgh mayor. And if you missed what I said earlier, he was on our delegation to the UAE that we took there in late 2018. And I hope you'll join to hear his welcoming remarks. And Danny, are there any closing remarks you'd like to make, or Chris, before we adjourn?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, we just wanted to say that we definitely believe there are many opportunities in the healthcare sector in the UAE. It's a growing sector. It's an important one. The UAE is very focused on this, so we strongly encourage Pittsburgh area hospitals and companies and anyone in the healthcare sector to engage in this important vertical. As mentioned, it might take time, but it's worthwhile, and the UAE is truly a gateway. So if you're successful in the UAE, you can be successful in Saudi and many other countries of the region. So thank you very much again for this opportunity, and we look forward to this session at 12:30 with Mayor Peduto.
Thank you, Chris. Danny?
All good. We're looking forward to seeing you in an hour.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. Thanks to those of you who joined in. And if you want to register for the session at 12:30, you can still do so. However, once the session starts, you won't be able to join. So thank you again, gentlemen from the U.S. U.A.E. Business Council. As I say, you guys do an excellent job, and highly recommend you. Look forward to many more projects in the future. And maybe another virtual webinar. You had some ideas about that, Danny. So we'll talk more. Thank you again.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.